urgent overhaul of the Redress scheme for victims of institutional child sexual abuse. To date, the scheme has received more than 8,200 applications and paid out more than $315 million to survivors. But victims advocates say too many people are waiting too long for payments. Now Labor is proposing a series of amendments to improve the scheme, including advance payments for sick and elderly applicants. For more, I'm joined by the Shadow Minister for Families, Social Services and Indigenous Australians, Linda Burney. Linda, welcome.
Good afternoon.
How serious are the delays in this scheme, and is the main reason it's not working because of what you reckon it's been structured badly?
The scheme is structured badly, and I want to emphasise that my goal with moving these amendments, I'm meeting with the Minister tomorrow, is to try and work with the government to improve the scheme so it's closer to what the Royal Commission actually said, and we stand in the shoes of those people that are old and unwell now that were children when these horrendous things happened to them. That's the goal in moving the amendments that I intend to move.
Take me through how the advance payment system would work and how you'd guard against potential fraud.
Right, so there is a way this system is working that is the Scottish model, and we've looked at that. It means that in Scotland, if you're over the age of 68 or if you're unwell, then there is an advance payment made automatically to you while your claim is being assessed, and obviously the amount of the advance payment would come off the top of whatever the final settlement is. But that's something that really needs to happen quickly, Patricia, because talking to so many of the people that they are old, they're getting dementia, and they, in many cases, have decided not to make a claim because the process is so re-traumatising and so difficult.
What other changes are you seeking, and do you have any government support for them? What sort of hearing are you getting?
I've spoken to no one from the government yet, but one of the changes is something the government has started to do, and that is name and shame those institutions that don't join. But we want that to go further, where the institution's tax deductibility is also taken. And this will mean a number of the bigger outstanding institutions that haven't signed up would have some sort of penalty paid upon them. We want the payments to be $200,000, not the $150,000 that is agreed between the Commonwealth and the states, and we realise that will require a new negotiation. We also want very much that the payments in the scheme currently are indexed, and we want that indexing to be gotten rid of. But the other thing that I didn't know, Patricia, and have learnt recently, is that if you're, for example, from the stolen generation and you get a payment because of that removal from the state, that amount is deducted from your redress payment if you're also eligible for redress. We really want the matrix to be looked at. This has been a major issue for victims of sexual assault, where the matrix really doesn't measure effectively the amount of damage. But the other thing we want is that the Commonwealth be a funder of last resort for those institutions that have gone out of existence or don't have the resources. So that means that children that were abused in those institutions aren't penalised because the institutions are no longer there. And there is big issues around privacy that I was made aware of very much by Clan today. But we also want the ongoing psychological counselling and support for recipients to be increased. And finally, we want a guarantee that those adults that get a payment, if they are not satisfied with that payment and they ask for a review, that the amount that the review pays can't be less than the original payment.
I want to change the topic to something that's been announced today that's been fairly controversial. What do you make of the Queensland Liberal National proposal for a curfew for young people in Townsville and Cairns?
I was asked about this earlier today, and So for our listeners, Deb Frecklingham, the leader of the LNP up in Queensland, has announced that there will be a curfew for, I think it's Townsville. Is that right, Patricia? That's far north Queensland. Now, the simple fact is this, that already if a young person is on bail, a curfew is often instituted in that case. But the LNP are not really able to explain how this would work. And I think calling for a curfew is a fairly lazy way to push that law and order thing that's often pushed in state elections. And it seems to me that we're probably talking about a whole bunch of disenfranchised young people that need a whole lot of support, more so than a restriction like a curfew. The fact that these children are in the situation they are tells us a whole lot of things about their family life. It perhaps tells us some things about the situation they find themselves in. And I think a curfew is a very lazy way of dealing with the issue.
Okay, so what's not a lazy way of dealing with the issue? I mean, given the crime rates are very high, what would you do as an alternative?
Well, there are a number of alternatives, and some of those powers are already with police, and that is various ways of sentencing, various ways of carrying out bail conditions. I think it would be useful for states and territory jurisdictions to have a look at their bail laws to see whether they're fit for purpose and keep up with the situation. And I know there has been an ongoing issue, Patricia, with young people around Townsville, disproportionately First Nations children, I have to say. And to me, there is nothing more powerful, and I have some experience in this, that quite often you're dealing with a small group of people, often repeat offenders, and case management is the way to deal with those young people.
It's also emerged that a young Liberal who made fun of Indigenous culture in a video posted online has been helping Deb Frecklinton's campaign. I mean, obviously, these sorts of stories emerge sometimes during political campaigns, but I suppose I want to get to the kind of heart of the issue, the idea of making that kind of fun. Obviously, the fact that this political person is disturbing, but are you worried that view is more widespread than some of us probably think?
Look, that's a really important point that you're making, and I don't know the details of the issue that you're describing, but the bigger point that you're making is something that I think we as a nation need to grapple with. We only have to look at what happened to Adam Goodes, and which is just unbelievable when you see the documentaries that have been made about Adam. And I know Adam personally, and he is a very decent young man that's doing some fantastic things with young people post-football. And I think that it doesn't take much to scratch the ugly underbelly of Australia, and racism comes pouring out. But the way to deal with racism, I have learned over a very long time, Patricia, is information. And ignorance often fuels those sorts of attitudes. And that's why a national process of truth-telling, which is part of the Uluru Statement, is just so important. We don't talk about that a lot, but your children are learning things at school that the generation that I come from and the generation after me didn't learn. And that's a good thing. But a national process of truth-telling would reach everybody.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Patricia.